As winter approaches in the rich gated community of Peacock Island, an exclusive golf club hires Biotech M, who have a revolutionary fertilizer which will allow the club's wealthy members to play golf all year round. This revolutionary fertilizer melts the snow and genetically modifies the grass. A spoiled teenager named Andrew is coming home from school on his bike. While riding, he is watching a video on his phone and almost gets hit with a car by the community security guard Dan, who scolds him for not paying attention to his surroundings. Shortly after, Andrew goes into his house and finds their nanny Camilla taking care of his baby sister Annie. Meanwhile, the security guard Dan is calling his daughter Patricia to pick her up later, who tells him she's busy and that he should meet other people. Dan is a self-proclaimed survivalist and always stores important things for the future in case of a crisis. Back in Andrew's house, Camilla informs him that her family needs her and she has to go, which leaves Andrew worried because he doesn't know how to take care of a baby. Annie is asleep, but moments later she wakes up and starts crying nonstop. Andrew tries to feed her and cheer her up, but nothing works. To his relief, their mother, Josie, finally arrives home after a busy day of work. Dan eats dinner alone and tries to broaden his survival skills by trying to build a fire with sticks, but fails. He then takes the powder from a shotgun shell and puts it under the stick and tries again. He succeeds but covers his face with ashes. The next morning, Josie is making a raw smoothie. Not knowing the water is contaminated from the fertilizer put in the snow, she drinks it. She then goes to Andrew's room, hands him Annie, and tells him to watch her until the nanny comes. Later, Dan is asking Patricia about her dating life. She doesn't want to talk about it, but tells him the name of the guy. During that time, Michael from Biotech M checks the new genetically modified grass on the golf course. As Dan takes Patricia to work, he talks about the exclusive rich golfers not having respect for the laws for nature, and that he despises them. Andrew is again worried and calls his mom because Camilla still hasn't shown up, and tells her he doesn't know what to do. The golf club owner, Marcy and Maud, are greeted by Michael, who assures them the course is ready and takes them to the golf course to try it out. Back at the golf course, Patricia works as a caddy and ignores her father's call because she's busy. She then hands Marcy a 7-iron, and as he plays golf, with Maud and Michael beside him, they're not aware that the fertilizer used on the golf course continues to contaminate the water in the neighborhood. As a result, the people of the neighborhood, who are unaware of the problem, continue to use the water for their daily needs. The contaminated water affects the human system completely, and one of the first ones to get infected by it is Jacques. Jax comes to his home and is called by his wife to join her in the jacuzzi. He then notices his teeth turning green but decides to ignore it, and then he quickly transitions into a zombie, running upstairs to the bathroom and biting his wife on the neck. In a few seconds, his wife turns into a zombie as well. Meanwhile, Marcy, Maud, and Michael are having a chat outside when suddenly a man bursts out the door warning them of people being sick. At that moment, several people who turned into zombies chase the man down, leaving the trio baffled. Then, Maud's infected dog comes running to her, jumps and takes a bite out of Maud's neck. Seeing that, the two men quickly run inside the golf club and try to close the door, but the dog swoops in and bites Marcy on the leg. And as they try to keep the doors closed, Marcy turns into a zombie and tries to bite Michael. He then quickly runs away and hides in the kitchen with a knife in his hand. On the other end, Josie gets home to her irritated son Andrew and Annie. Moment Dan gets a call from an old woman complaining her neighbors are noisier than usual, and as he approaches the door, the old woman feels dizzy from her tea and also transforms, chasing Dan. He gets in his car, tries to call back up, and no one answers. He then leaves a message to his daughter and drives away. Unfortunately for Patricia, she has already encountered a zombie and is trying to fight it off. Andrew is ordered by his mother, who's exercising, to make his baby sister a formula and almost uses tap water. But his mother informs him to always use bottled water for the baby. As Josie finishes her workout and goes over to pick up Annie, feels dizzy. Later, she's asleep on the couch and Andrew is taking a drink from the fridge. Suddenly, she turns into a zombie and starts chasing Andrew. Afraid, he quickly runs outside, and out of nowhere, Dan accidentally hits Josie with his car and drops her. Moments later, she wakes up and Dan tells him to go back in his house and lock the doors. Andrew then pulls his mom by the legs to their house. Concurrently, the cops close the door connecting them to the island to the main city to keep them quarantined. Back at home, Andrew prevents his mother from biting his sister and locks her in the bathroom. and in an attempt to make his sister quiet he covers her with a blanket, pillows, and a stuffed toy. Consequently, a zombie almost catches Andre through the pet door when he sees his cat walk through. Patricia is hiding in the cart garage. Scared, she calls her father to ask him what's going on, and he just asks her to wait for him to come and get her. As the night closes, the military decides to bomb some areas zombies flooded in and cuts the power off too. The next day, Camilla watches from afar the tragic scenes happening in Peacock Island. Later, Andre checks on his mom, not knowing Annie was following him. Josie tries to bite her yet again, but Andre lures her out with the vegetable. But Josie accidentally knocks the TV stand while following Andre and is smashed by the TV. Andre, traumatized, simply drags her body back to the bathroom. He decides to leave the house and subtly lets in the zombies standing in his door and quickly escapes with Annie. He then gets surrounded at the grocery store, where luckily Dan grabs him and shuts the door on the zombies. When Andre goes to look for formula for Annie, she strays away and stops at a freezer, where Andre discovers an infected Patricia locked in. Dan then tells Andre Patricia is his daughter and he will find her a cure soon. At the same time, Michael is still at the golf club hiding and calls Biotech M to get him out. And they tell him there is a protocol to follow and for him to wait there, and they will start Operation Clean Up. At the grocery store, Dan once again attempts to make a fire out of a stick. However, Andre comes over and uses a blowtorch to light it up for him. They then listen to a radio broadcast of the Minister of Public Security, saying they're trying to find out the origin of the virus, turning people into zombies. The radio announcer Patrick informs that the government will have no problem sacrificing ordinary people to save those in power. Back in the grocery store, Andre shows a sign of dizziness, and when Dan tries to react, he assures him it's a brain freeze he got from a popsicle he ate. Then Dan calls the radio station and informs him they need help, to which Patrick replies, the only way to save all humanity is to contain and eradicate the source of the virus. Frustrated, Dan hangs the phone up. Then, losing hope of getting help from anyone else, Dan suggests they go down to an underground safe and stay there. But Andre insists they find the source of the disease to find a vaccine. To which Dan gets an idea that it might have spread through the water, stating that would be the most viable way to affect all these people at the same time. At the Peacock Island Marina, female twins stated as the protocol appeared to clean up the virus. Meanwhile, Andre and the others leave the grocery store while putting on a metal basket over Patricia's head to prevent her from biting anyone. Camilla, who is in the mainland, calls the station to ask the people uninfected on the island some help, but is disappointed to hear Patrick being only concerned over the virus spreading out of the island to endanger millions. At the golf club, Michael burns all the contracts and deal papers done between Biotech M and himself to leave no evidence, but he keeps a fertilizer sample. Then the protocol arrives. Delighted, Michael tells them to get rid of all the fertilizer, change the grass back. After he opens a suitcase, they bring the cure inside, which will kill all the molecules inside the fertilizer after 24 hours in the shape of small snowy balls. However, one of the twins chokes him from behind, while the other puts the fertilizer he kept to himself in his mouth, then drops him unconscious. The twins not aware, one of the cures fall on the ground from Michael's hand. Andre and the group arrive at the water plant and decide to leave Annie in the car as she would just cry. Then as they enter the plant, a zombie is hiding under the water, and when Patricia senses this, she quickly runs towards it, jumping in the water. Dan then follows her and jumps in as well. When he pulls her out, the zombie hiding in there also jumps out but leaves Dan alone as he was holding Patricia, and her scent is masking Dan's. So instead, it starts chasing Andre. He races to the car. Dan is trying to pull Patricia out of the water, and he accidentally rips her fragile arm. Moments later, he gets her out and uses her as a cover to mask his scent and gets to the car. While in the car, Andre uses Patricia's severed arm to unlock her phone and realizes grass growing on her arm. When he shows Dan, he quickly understands the wealthy golfers are responsible for the virus and drives to the golf club in rage. Back at the golf club, one of the twins drops the cure on the grass, instantly covering the whole thing. Andre and the group arrive at the golf club, and as they get inside, Dan locks Patricia in a storage room, and Andre makes a barricade with chairs for Annie not to escape so that he can help Dan. While looking for a source of the outbreak, they discover Maud's infected dog almost turned to grass. Then, Dan feels a little dizzy, but tells Andre to go back to his sister and takes Patricia's arm with him. Annie starts crying, and when Andre gets back, she isn't there. He then starts looking for her. Dan, on the other hand, discovers multiple bombs planted on a timer, and the dizziness gets worse but stops the timer right before it hits zero with the severed arm. The twins, surprised the place hasn't exploded, get back in the building to investigate and shortly find Annie in the kitchen eating a carrot. Wanting to transform her, one of them drops the fertilizer on the ground for Annie to eat, but they go away when they hear Andre coming. Unlucky, Annie already eats it before Andre could get to her. The twins then come back to finish Andre off, but unaware Annie had turned, she bites one of them, and consequently Dan comes from behind and gets the other twin. Andre then accidentally steps on the cure that was dropped on the floor and causes it to burst, which gets into Dan and Annie's nose and starts the curing process. Then the twins shoot each other as they are about to turn into zombies. Dan then chases Andre down, but is calmed due to Annie being with him, which allows Andre to take his phone and calls Patricia's. After he finds the phone, he then makes a video explaining the characteristics of the infected and that he needs help out of this place, which then catches the attention of Camilla even more. Then the government sends the army to eliminate everyone on the island, and Dan, even though healed, is killed. But fortunately, Andre and the now healed Annie hide their way out to the shore where Camilla and her family rescue them on a boat. And as they leave, Andre drops Patricia's severed arm in the river, which then a fish finds it and instantly gets infected. And with that, the movie ends.